Are you ready? Okay, I will call to order the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for November 18th. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. McGill. Will you call roll, please?
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Connor.
Here.
Hockman.
Here.
Burns and Larimer Hall are not here, and Torres Santos is not here.
Thank you. Ms. Rapp, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Chair Longstreet.
Written communications? None. That brings us to public comment. I have no slips for public comment. Does anyone care to make any comment on anything that is not before the commission today? Okay, seeing no one, we will move to community service recognition. Don't believe we had anything this month.
Not this
do we?
month,
No.
thank you.
Commissioner committee assignment reports. Anyone have anything? Well, I attended the Park Foundation meeting, and Park is in the process of its annual membership drive, I would say, and so I'd encourage everyone that supports park and recreation activities in the community to support the Park Foundation. Also, I attended the Golf Advisory Committee, and we will see one of those items on the agenda today. Commission and staff communications. Ms. Rapp, do we have anything?
No, Chair Longstreet.
Okay, we're moving right through this. Our youth council member is not here. Consent calendar. We have the approval of minutes from October 28th.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And now we are to Street Tree Advisory Committee items. We are just moving right along today. Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, first item is 922 State Street. The tree is a redbud tree. The reasons stated were that the multi-trunk nature of the tree causes visibility issues with the storefront. The tree was cut off and has now grown back to its original height at the time it was cut. The Street Tree Advisory Committee determined that part of the problem was that the tree was a multi-trunk tree, and that visibility could be improved, although not completely, with a single trunk variety. The Street Tree Advisory Committee and staff recommend approval on the condition the applicant replant with a minimum of 15-gallon size single trunk redbud tree.
Okay.
I will make a motion to approve the staff recommendation that of the removal on the condition that the applicant replaces with a 15-gallon single trunk.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 2A2. Oh, I'm sorry. We're moving on. Please come up, Mr. Hayes. I'm sorry, and we will suspend our vote.
I know you're really eager for early dinner, I can tell, and things are moving along very rapidly.
Well, usually when we approve things, we don't have our speakers.
Well, I apologize for delaying the afternoon cocktail.
We welcome you here. Thank you.
But Chairperson Longstreet and Commissioners and staff, my name is Ronald Hayes. I own a retail property at 922 State Street. The agenda for this address states a recommendation for removal of a tree that unfortunately has turned into a 5-foot-tall bush with at least 10 branches. It was my impression that, and I understand from reading your recommendation letter there, it's requiring replacement of a 15-gallon of the same type of tree. The frontage on my building is only 25 feet. Unfortunately, this picture doesn't show, but there are 3 fully mature palm trees with trunks that are at least 2 feet, if not more wide, and 1 mature sycamore tree with a similar sized trunk. 4 times that is over 8 feet, or 1/3 of the entire frontage of my property has solid blocking trees. I don't see the need for another tree. I think it's overkill. I believe the goal of the downtown landscaping is to enhance the retail environment. But at some point in time, and there's no question in my mind that we have reached it at this particular planting area, we begin to trade off the loss of visibility for any advantage that we may perceive by having a user-friendly environment through the landscaping. And there's no question in my mind that we have passed that point with this. I don't mind replacing something in that spot, but I would much prefer to put in something like the holly sort of plant, I'm not sure what the name of it is, that's up and down State Street that maintains itself below about 2.5 feet, or anything of a like matter that would maintain that height and not restrict any more visibility. I don't mind paying for the removal of this bush, and I don't mind paying for a low-profile plant in its place. But I seriously don't see a need to have a 4th tree occupying more than 1/3 of the frontage of my retail space. I think it's overkill, and I would appreciate your support in reversing your vote and reversing your consent, and give me consideration for alternate planting. Thank you very much.
Staff, did you have anything to add on that? I mean, as far as I recall, we have a street tree master plan for the State Street downtown area. Is that correct?
Chair Longstreet, the State Street plan was developed with this store in place, and they had opportunity input at that time, and did not protest this tree. The staff does not see a reason not to move forward with the recommendations.
Other questions of staff, or, I mean, that's kind of how I see. I mean, we have to stick with that plan without, I don't want to mess with the plan. Is a 15-gallon tree going to be tall and thin then and have its foliage at a height? Is that what we're aiming for here?
Chair Longstreet, the minimum 15-gallon size was a recommendation because a smaller tree wouldn't be appropriate to plant. Certainly a larger single trunk tree would have a higher canopy. That's the reason for the recommendation of a minimum 15-gallon size tree, to minimize the impact of the cost to the applicant and still provide a single trunk variety that will be developed above the storefront windows.
Okay. That's our goal. Because part of that street tree master plan, or the State Street master plan, was that we maintain skyline trees in the palms and the sycamores and some basic shade trees to soften the area. So, that was done about 5 years ago, as I recall.
May I address 2 issues?
One more time, okay.
It always bothers me when I hear somebody from city staff say, we had this thing and we showed it to you and you didn't object. Well, I got to tell you, the plan that I was shown was what one might call a 2-dimensional plan. I never saw a 3rd dimension plan. Second point, the fact that the master plan was approved doesn't mean that it cannot be modified. It is not set in concrete. I've done my homework. There's nothing that says you cannot modify that at this hearing.
Oh, I understand that. And I was on the commission and I approved that plan and I did the site visits and I worked hard on it.
And the last on the wrap-up, if I am not successful in avoiding overkill on this, I will appeal it to the City Council.
Okay, thank you. That is, all of our decisions are appealable within 10 days. Is there any change in?
I have a question.
Okay.
All right, Chair Longstreet, Mr. Downey, is there any choice in this master plan or anything that would be a lower, shrub-like variety? Is there anything that we would even have to choose from in that plan if we decided to go that way?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, the decision is whether you would agree to have this tree removed. The replacement recommendation is to desire to maintain the number of trees in the area. If this commission chose to make a recommendation not to replace the tree but consider replacing with other suitable plant material, that's certainly an option for you. The master plan does not preclude the removal of the trees. Without replacement, the intent of the master plan was to provide a certain design for the area, and it's Street Advisory Committee's recommendation and staff's recommendation that plan continue to be implemented.
And as a follow-up question, the Street Tree Advisory Committee and staff, did they take into consideration any of the applicants' questions about the blocking of the view to his retail space?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, that was the stated desired reason for removing the tree. The Street Advisory Committee did consider that and visited the site to observe the tree in the location. So I believe they had ample information to make that decision.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second on the table, and we will vote on that now with the information we have. Well, I think we need to suspend that vote with the information that Mr. Hayes gave us in case anyone chooses to change their vote at this point. I do want the public comment to be considered. So we have a motion to remove the tree and replace with a 15-gallon tree of the same species. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
We abstain.
Okay. So we are appealable within 10 days. That brings us to item B, 2B.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners, if it pleases you, item 2G is also related to this property, and I'll present both items together. The 421 North Belpus is in the middle of revising the building to a new configuration. They've requested to remove these two true shrub-like trees at the side of the property. The Commission has seen this one before, they referred it back to the Street Advisory Committee with plans to show where the storefront amenities would be so we could determine locations of trees. The Street Advisory Committee was shown the plan to show where those amenities would be and determined that there is space adjacent to the building on this side for one street tree, but no other space along this property for an additional street tree. The Street Advisory Committee staff recommend that these be approved on the condition that there's a parkway opened up along the building to provide planting space for one street tree adjacent to the building, and an additional street tree be planted within 800 block of Riddick. In addition to that, this applicant has requested to change the designated species for this block of Riddick. The Street Advisory Committee reviewed that request and could not determine a reason to change the designated species away from the Brisbane box tree and recommends that designation be denied.
Okay. Are there questions of staff? We have no speakers for this item. Mr. Burns.
Yes, I have one question. First, I apologize for being late, but Where would we, or where would someone put the tree? Somewhere along the street? Do they own another property on the street?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, the commission in the past has required more trees be planted on a development project than there's space for at that site. There are other spaces along the street that are available for street trees to be planted, and we would ask that the applicant check with those neighbors to find one that would be willing to have one as a good neighbor policy, and they would then discuss that location with us, and we come to a conclusion of where that tree would be placed.
Mr. Hockman.
Chair Longstreet, Mr. Downey. And what happens if the applicant is not able to find a neighbor that is willing to have a tree placed?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, if the commission approves the staff recommendation, we're confident that they will find a space. There's plenty of opportunities. The staff would look at other opportunities in that general vicinity than to find a location to plant a second tree.
Okay. Other questions? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I will make a motion that we can, well, that we don't quite concur with staff, that we approve the removal of the tree on the condition that the maximum available parkway be opened up, one street tree be planted adjacent to the property, and another tree be planted elsewhere in the near vicinity of the location.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And who we're concurring with, not just staff, but also the Street Tree Advisory Committee. I want people to understand that there is a committee that goes out and reviews all these trees, so not just staff. Okay, that brings us to item 2B.
Chair Longstreet,
Yeah.
were you going to act on item 2G as well, the designated street tree?
Oh, the designation, yes, we do have that. To change the designation, I don't see a need. There was quite a number of suggestions offered, wasn't there, on that? One of them
Chair
was...
Longstreet, the applicant did suggest California pepper tree or jacaranda tree as replacements for the Brisbane box tree.
I thought there was also another kind of Brisbane box, too, wasn't there? Or there were
Chair
yeah.
Longstreet, the tree is Lophostum confertus, which is Brisbane box.
Okay. Well, is there a motion on the change in street tree designation? We were recommended that it not be changed. That's 2G.
Chair Longstreet, I'll go ahead and ask a question since
Good.
since this is a new item for me and Mr. Downey. What basically are our instructions when we're looking at designated street tree changes? Is it imperative that we find a reason for change to go along with this, or what really is the criteria that we're looking at?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, the changes to the street tree master plan as far as street tree designations, as times change and space becomes available, it sometimes becomes apparent that original tree selections may no longer be appropriate for the site. The applicant in this case is requesting it because he doesn't care for that particular tree. The Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed that information, determined that the Lophostum would fit well in this situation, and therefore that was their recommendation.
Is there a motion on this, or any more questions?
I move we agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and staff and deny the changing the street designation on Reddick Street and leave it as it is.
Second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. And that brings us now to 2B, 803 North Milpas Street. Staying in the same location, same area.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the trees at 803 North Milpas on the Milpas frontage are a Indian laurel fig tree, otherwise known as ficus, and a small African fern pine. The applicant has proposed to remove these trees as part of a development proposal to the Planning Commission. The Street Advisory Committee and staff, park staff, were unaware that Planning Commission had tentatively agreed to this development. Nor were we aware of the requirements of the pedestrian master plan. Planning Commission is requiring this project follow the pedestrian master plan. With the proposed design, Street Advisory Committee determined there would be at least 6 feet of available sidewalk at the location of these trees were they to remain, and based their recommendation on the fact that they believe that 6 feet is ample space for pedestrians, and adjacent properties do not have any more space than this one does. Street Advisory Committee recommends denial, and I'm uncertain whether the new information would change their opinion. However, did not have as much information about the pedestrian master plan as we have available today. The members of transportation staff are here to discuss the pedestrian master plan for you.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Longstreet, Commissioners, my name is Steve Foley. I'm with the Public Works Department. I am the city's transportation planning supervisor, and Mr. Downey asked me to be here and give you a little overview, kind of the history of the pedestrian master plan and also of this project. The pedestrian master plan is a 300-page document adopted in April of 2005, and is a focused pedestrian extension of the circulation element. Chapter 8 of the pedestrian is the pedestrian design guidelines, which were implemented through the plan's goal number 4, which reads, establish design guidelines that will result in pedestrian environments that are attractive, functional, and accessible to all people. To give some background for the sidewalk design, staff used the plan's North Milpas Street Corridor plan that describes Milpas as follows. The Milpas Street Corridor stretches along Milpas Street from Cabrillo Boulevard to Canon Perdido Street. The northern corridor consists of Milpas Street between Yananali and Canon Perdido. Statistics show a significant number of pedestrian-involved crashes along the Milpas Street corridor, as well as high amounts of pedestrian activity. Pedestrian capital improvements in this area will facilitate pedestrian movement through and across intersecting streets and Milpas. Besides widening the sidewalk corridor, curb extensions are identified as one of the 8 improvements that may be included to the intersections. The Planning Commission has given staff is what they would like to see in all projects is to provide at least the minimum dimensions in the pedestrian corridor, which for Milpas is 15 total feet, of which 8 feet is the pedestrian through zone, which is the area intended for pedestrian travel free of permanent and temporary structures. Recently, the 803 North Milpas project was reviewed by the PC on August 20th, and at that time, the Planning Commission continued the project with the direction to the applicant to work with staff to provide an acceptable sidewalk improvement. After several meetings with staff, the applicant revised the project plans and demonstrated full compliance with the PMP, which is the Pedestrian Master Plan. The project was re-represented to the Planning Commission, approved 2 weeks ago on November 5th. Specifically, when working with the applicant after the continuation by the Planning Commission, a compromise was made, and a portion of the street right-of-way was used, and so we used 2 feet of the street right-of-way, pulling the street curb out, and then the applicant was able to move the building back in order to get that 15-foot corridor. Leaving that tree where it is would then leave, in this current configuration, it in 2 feet in back from the curb. So it would pinch at that point, and you'd have only 6 feet of through pedestrian way, where the pedestrian master plan is calling for a minimum of 8 feet.
And so, as you move the curb out 2 feet, you would replace a tree at that point? There would be room for a tree?
As is proposed with the applicant's proposal, is that with the removal of these trees, they would be replaced by additional trees, and they would be pulled out towards the curb.
Okay, so okay. I mean, I did about 4 years on the circulation element, so this stuff is important to me. And the other aspect is not only the size of the sidewalk, but the walkability, to make sure we maintain the trees and that barrier with the cars and all of those other amenities that make a pedestrian access improvements. So are there questions of staff regarding this? But we have a request from the applicant to speak. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Foley, what are the neighboring properties like in terms of right-of-way and pedestrian access?
As Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, as part of our working with the applicant on this project, it's pretty much recognized this is the first major redevelopment of the Milpas corridor since the adoption of the pedestrian master plan. So in discussing with the applicant and also the Planning Commission, it was pretty much decided, at least by the Planning Commission, that we need to start somewhere. And so this would be pretty much the first pedestrian improvement where you would get those types of infrastructural improvements that meet the pedestrian master plan.
So would it be fair to say that if we were to go with the plan that I guess has been compromised and worked on, that could be seen as a model for the future developments on the block or in the area?
Commissioner Longstreet, or Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, it's kind of hard to say. I would say that since the Planning Commission made such a focus on at least coming up with the minimum, that they probably, at looking at future projects, would be looking to be consistent with that.
This is huge on Milpas. Kind of larger than just this project. This is, and we'll be coming, we have a number of trees on Milpas. I would like to see us look at it longer range, be able to kind of see how this impacts we need to be educated on how it impacts the entire corridor, and the Street Tree Advisory Committee needs to be involved. So I think one of the things I'm going to ask, irregardless of this, is that we have some education and a site visit with the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and we all come to grips with what we're facing in the future and a plan for us. Does that make sense, Ms. Rapp?
It does, Chair Longstreet, but I just wanted to remind you that the applicant actually has a presentation. He has a PowerPoint presentation, and I think that might provide additional information visually if you would like to hear that before you go into further commission discussion.
Mr. Gorin? Or Ms. Yes. Jarrett?
Good afternoon. I'm Jarrett Gorin, Vanguard Planning. I represent 803 North Milpas, LLC. They're the owners of the property and the applicants on this project. Just real quick to correct Mr. Downey, we don't have a tentative consent of the Planning Commission. We have a 5-0 unanimous approval of a tentative map from the Planning Commission on this project. That did happen the very afternoon that the Street Tree Advisory Committee had heard us in the morning. So it was kind of a busy day for me, at least. This is our approved project. We've got 2 existing street trees, which I highlighted right here. That's the fern pine. This is the ficus. And we're developing our property like this, and we've got the building set back about 5 feet from our property line. But this is how those trees relate to the rest of our project. There's the picture of them. Just a different view from I think the down the street views were really helpful too, because they show the degree to which those trees kind of encroach in the sidewalk area. Again, there's ficus and the fern pine right there. We're proposing to replace those trees with 4 trees, so a net gain of 2 trees along Milpas Street. The species we picked, I believe, is also fern pine. That was after speaking with Mr. Downey to make sure that we had the right species for this part of Milpas Street selected. So we'd put 4 trees out, evenly spaced, to just give a nice continuous corridor of new street trees. We've got one really nice mature tree, but one kind of smaller. I'm not sure that existing fern pine is bigger than what we would put in with our project, and you'd get at least 4 of those with our project. And then we've got these pedestrian master plan improvements, and this was the single biggest deal with the Planning Commission review of this project. So I can illustrate this. This is going to follow along with everything Mr. Foley talked about with you guys. This is the page from the pedestrian master plan that has these recommended sections, and this is the recommended section for streets of 80 feet right-of-way, which is what we have on Milpas Street. And we'll make that readable here. So you can see how this lays out across 15 feet, and these are recommended minimums. And my understanding from Mr. Downey is that the Street Tree Advisory Committee's feeling about these is that, well, they're just kind of guidelines, they're a suggestion. We can do them, or if it's not convenient, we can do something else. The way that the city's planning body, the Planning Commission, is implementing this plan is they want to see the recommended minimums. So that is what we had to go to great effort to revise our project to provide, and we end up being able to do that working with transportation staff. To show you how that works out with our project, this is a section of our sidewalk. I'm going to rotate it so it's in the same orientation as the pedestrian master plan figure. And what you see here, this is one of the proposed new trees at a new location, and that's in a 6x6 tree well so that it can get to a large size over time and not cause conflicts with the sidewalk. But there is a walkable tree grate over that, so actually it's walkable surface all the way up to the trunk of the tree. And basically, you can see that we're just going number by number on the pedestrian master plan. We've got the 6-foot curb zone, the 4-foot furnishing zone that gives you that buffer between the traffic on the street and the pedestrians, the 8-foot wide pedestrian through zone, and then this 2.5-foot frontage zone along the building. And this was actually revised in our Planning Commission hearing to give us a 3-foot planter, and they let us take 6 feet out of the curb zone. But it's basically the same section. 6 inches, big difference. So the project that was approved by the Planning Commission fully implements the pedestrian master plan, and it is going to provide good street trees along that section of the street. So the Street Tree Advisory Committee, their recommendation to you today is in conflict with the pedestrian master plan. And what I did here is this is a 4-foot by 4-foot planter, and I'm showing this to show you where that lays out relative to these proposed sidewalk improvements. That's how it lays out. It reduces the through pedestrian zone down to 6 feet, and the Street Tree Advisory Committee can say, hey, we think 6 feet is good enough, but then they're basically saying we're the policy-making body on this citywide master plan because we think 6 feet is good enough. The pedestrian master plan says 8 feet is what you need on an 80-foot right-of-way, and this is a very high pedestrian use area. And my question is it a good idea to reduce the recommended width of the pedestrian through zone by a full 25% in a high pedestrian use area such as this? If the Street Tree Advisory Committee is willing to say, yes, we approve replacement and removal of trees because of things like they block a storefront. I mean, I think this is at least equally as important, pedestrian circulation on a street like Milpas. And so I respectfully request that your commission does not follow the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation in this case, and that you allow us to replace these trees with 4 new trees at a location that will not conflict with that pedestrian master plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Gorin?
My Street,
yes.
if I could, because I think it's important to kind of talk about how we got here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, there's been a history where there are projects that are in development, that are in review, that are going through the whole process through community development. Sometimes there are projects that are going through the Public Works Department for improvements to city streets, et cetera. And although we are all supposed to work together and doing appropriate reviews of different projects as they go through the review process, this is an example, once again, where things are coming to the commission a little out of kilter in terms of when we would like to have that input. So what you have before you, and unfortunately with the timing, is decisions that have been made without full knowledge of all of the information. And I'll just use as an example, I have not watched the Planning Commission discussion of this item, but just based on what we've learned from staff, that in fact this was a priority with the Planning Commission, and they talked about the recommended minimums. And so I'm not sure to what degree that information was presented to the Street Tree Advisory Committee. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this is not normally how we do business. So that's why we have the awkward situation that we have here with a recommendation. You have a recommendation and actually actions by the Planning Commission, and then recommendations without full knowledge and information coming to you by the Street Tree Advisory Committee. So the Commission has the opportunity to act this evening or to look at a different direction. I'm not sure where Chair Longstreet was going, but I did want to just provide that background, that it makes an awkward situation for the Commission tonight, and I apologize for that based on how staff in the various departments did or didn't work together. But that's why we are where we are tonight.
Oh, my feeling is that, we're looking at this project tonight and right now, and it has an immediacy to it. And then we have another step in our own education about the pedestrian master plan for us, for the Commission itself, and for the Street Tree Advisory Committee. So I kind of see those as separate issues to a certain extent. I think the Street Tree Advisory Committee did not have all the information they needed to make a decision. Personally, I think when an applicant has gone into negotiation with staff, and there's been a lot of give and take to come to an agreement that meets the needs of the public, which is what I see this doing. We have to give that some weight. I mean, they have worked towards a goal. They're replacing trees. I think this is an important pedestrian area. It's right near the high school. It gets heavy traffic several times a day, even more so than just the walkability of that neighborhood. But that's my piece. Now, other people must have questions, opinions.
Believe it or not, I do.
I'm shocked.
Longstreet, staff, and I don't know who to address this to, but with this new information, knowing that the Street Tree Advisory Committee didn't have this information, staff has now seen this information. Has staff revised their recommendation since the agenda has gone to print?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, this information has come to us very late, and we haven't had an opportunity to address all of the items. I will point out that the municipal code does allow for the finding for removal of these trees, given a project that is going in at this site. And my personal perspective would be that I would support removal of these trees. I'm not the only staff that makes that decision, but we have not had an opportunity to discuss it at a full staff level.
Okay.
So I would like to concur with Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman on the fact that since this has already gone into the process that it has, we see very clearly that walkability is an issue. And as said before, that is a highly used area. And I would say I would go with the plan as it stands. Thanks.
Burns?
Well, I think we're all in agreement. Just a question. 8 or 10 years ago, friends of mine were talking about all the various ficuses along Milpas, and possibly if maybe now or maybe at another meeting you could give us some input, because I was thinking that we were trying to come up with another tree because those ficuses are so big. And is that any information you can give me?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Burns, the current designated species for this block is the African fern pine. We do have a goal to look at this corridor and come up with a management plan for the eventual fate of the ficus trees and the design of the street. That is something for the future, however.
Let me ask another question to staff, and I'm sorry to take you guys' time. Sometimes, and I realize we have a lack of money, it's a good word, but we have also what's called a 3P plan, and we might look at that as a goal to make sure that we don't work in, I'm going to use it as a silo between the different departments, because right now everyone's going to be able to say what a great job we did, yet somehow we are really screwed up. I don't know how else to put it. I will make the motion unless somebody else wants to make it. I move that we do not go along with staff and Street Tree Advisory Committee, but allow the applicant to remove the trees and go with the plan as per was approved by the Planning Commission on 803 Milpas.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion?
Yeah, just a reminder for me, the proposed replacement trees are?
Burn.
They are the designated street tree? All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Ms. Rapp, did you want to?
Just a comment in response to Commissioner Burns. This is actually an issue that gets discussed at the department head level. It happens, unfortunately, given the large number of projects that are going on in all three of the departments at any one time. So it is just an opportunity for us to remind all of our staff of the process, and that, in fact, when projects involve street trees, we do have to sometimes remind them that they actually do need to work with us earlier in the review process. So this is just another one of those examples that happens infrequently, but we will be discussing this at a department head level.
Thank you. Okay, and any further questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Now, the next thing I'm going to ask for is when we have three new commissioners coming on board. One of the things I'd like to do in probably the winter, after we get them settled in, is to have a site visit to Milpas, have a representative with the pedestrian master plan to explain how the effects of it on that corridor, and when we start looking at it, so we don't, so we have it in our minds and start that process. Thank you. That brings us to item 2C, I believe. Mr. Downey? Oh, and that we include the Street Tree Advisory Committee in that site visit.
Bear with me, I'm trying to get the presentation back up.
While Mr. Downey is doing that, I would like to share with the Commission that following the work session that we did on the parks budget, and I had a lot of feedback from commissioners that what a good workshop that was. And so since then, staff have kind of talked about identifying some of the other program areas that would be helpful to really have kind of a concentrated overview. And so one of those that we've identified for early in the year is actually the forestry program. So we are going to start working on that so that January, February, somewhere in there, we will have a work session with the Commission that probably will include a tour of some of the street trees. So it may be that we can, include Milpas as part of that. But we really want to provide you with, and the new commissioners, with a good background in the urban forest and the different street trees. We'll also have some materials for you, resource materials for the future.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the applicant is here to speak for the Nopal Site 1, and they have to leave, so I'm asking if we can take that one at this point.
Okay, so that would be D2. Get to that one. Okay.
That would be, 2D2.
All right.
Chair Longstreet, and Commissioners, the tree is a rather large liquid amber on this small lot. The reasons stated were potential damage to the foundation. The applicant provided photographic evidence that the tree roots have entered the basement area. The tree is very large for the lot. The Street Advisory Committee and staff recommend the removal be approved on the condition that the applicant replace it with a designated street tree in the parkway.
Okay. Would you like to come forward? Yeah. No, you have to come up to the mic. We're on TV, and they need to hear you.
Well, hello. We love this tree. Mm-hmm. We bought this house about 4 years ago, and they told us right then we better take this tree out because it's in everybody's plumbing in the neighborhood and all over the place, and it's pulled up our, front porch and the sidewalk and all, and the neighbor had to redo their, you get the general idea. And they said to take it out, and we didn't want to because we love it's the most beautiful tree you've ever seen. However, it belongs in a park. And it's going to cost me a lot of money to take out this tree. I don't want to take out this tree, but we have to preserve our house, unfortunately. And I wish we could put it somewhere else. Maybe there's a mountain somewhere that you could, relocate it.
If you think taking it out's expensive, try moving it.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, it's the most beautiful tree you've ever seen when it's all red and amber, but that's the way it is. So.
Thank you. Mr. Downey, what is the street tree? Do you know the street tree designation for that block? Do you read?
Chair Longstreet, unfortunately, I had that information in my brain. I've lost it. I believe it's California pepper.
Okay, great. Okay, so is there any questions of staff? A motion?
No, I'd make the motion, though, to uphold the committee and staff recommendation that we approve the removal on the condition that the applicant plant an approved street tree at 906 Nopal Street.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry about your beautiful tree.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now we are back to C, right?
Chair Longstreet, back to 2C.
2C.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the site is 3714 State Street, occupied currently by the Sandman Inn as well as some other businesses. The proposal is to relocate 6 palm trees that fall within the setback into the project. The preliminary landscape plan provided shows palm trees located to within the canopies of existing setback jacaranda trees. The Street Advisory Committee and staff recommend that the relocations be approved on the condition none are located within the canopies of the existing trees. In addition to that, the Street Advisory Committee had a comment that the building design causes a conflict with some setback jacaranda tree canopies, and they would comment that they would like to see a design change not to impact those canopies.
Not behind it, under the. Okay, Miss.
The question is, where is this all on the plan with the Planning Commission? I mean, I don't want to beat the bush, but are we? We're not behind.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, this is preliminary plans that have been going through the DART process. They're in the middle of the approval process. It's well in advance of any final approvals.
So those comments from the Street Tree Advisory Committee would just go forward into that approval process. I mean, we have no say over that, really.
I will provide those comments to the case planner.
Okay. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you. Chair Longstreet, Mr. Downey, is there some urgency to the applicant or the advisory committee and staff recommending that we allow this to happen now as opposed to waiting for the project that may eventually happen there?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, the project actually came to staff's attention earlier, and the initial request was to remove several trees in the setback. The project now proposes to relocate not only these trees in the setback, but many other palms to within the project. The Street Advisory Committee staff both support the relocation over any removals and would like to see the approval move forward.
As a follow-up to that, though, is there a chance or a likelihood that when a project is finally approved on that place that these trees would be sacrificed or moved again, or if we approve this here, would that stick, that these now become embedded in what moves forward?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, if the commission makes the motion to approve the relocation of these trees, the applicant has two choices if situation change. They are not required to follow that relocation. They can, again, propose a different proposal that might appease any changes to the plan. It simply gives them approval to do this relocation if things move forward as planned. If they don't move forward as planned and it's not possible to relocate them into the project, they would be required to come back and revisit the situation.
Okay. Mr. Burns?
Got a little confusion. If we're saying that we're letting them relocate the trees, but if they're not able to relocate the trees, they would have to come back here. But if they relocate the trees, we don't really, from our point of view, we don't care on whether it's 3 feet to the left or 5 feet over. If the Planning Commission is happy with it, then we're not going to hear about it again. Correct?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, the approval of this proposal would not cause the construction the relocation to occur right away. It would simply allow them to prove that they have this approval to other commissions when they review the project. They would not receive a permit until such time that they've gotten approvals for the project as a whole.
Yeah, okay. All right. I think now we got where we needed to go. Further questions?
I'll make a motion to concur with staff and the Street Tree Advisory Committee on both the recommendation and the comment.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. 2D1, Foothill and Cienegita. We are seeing many bigger projects tonight. This is interesting.
Chair
Maybe the
Longstreet-
economy's changing.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the project at Foothill in Cienegita is proposed to put in 3 office buildings on a currently vacant lot. The several trees are in conflict with that plan. In your jurisdiction, 11 of those are under consideration today. The reasons were due to construction of the new project, including the 3 office buildings and public right-of-way improvements. All the requested trees would be impacted by the proposed construction and improvements. The site is not currently within city jurisdiction, but will be annexed before this project is final approval. That is why you're looking at these items today. The Street Tree Advisory Committee determined that 3 of the palms could reasonably be preserved and relocated off-site. They wouldn't necessarily fit into the plans for the planting plan. The other trees are not good candidates for relocation. The Street Advisory Committee staff recommend that you approve the removals on the condition that the applicant explore options to save the 3 palm trees to be relocated to an off-site location.
Questions of staff?
I'm sorry, we were trying to orient on the map. Could you repeat what the recommendation was?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, the recommendation is that the trees be approved for removal on the condition the applicant explore options to find locations for the 3 palm trees to be relocated off-site.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Just as more of a technical question, if they explore an option and they find a great place to put it and it's outside of the city limits, is that a concern with the staff?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, the Street Tree Advisory Committee staff discussed that on site when we visited. The greater goal would be to try and preserve the trees anywhere. And the recommendation gives them the opportunity to do that outside of the city limits if they can't find inside of the city limits locations.
Okay. Other questions? Motion then.
I've known this property, I think, for 20 years when I think it was a gas station that was leaking. So I'm very happy that the applicant is actually getting something done for this eyesore. But my motion is that we approve the staff recommendation and the Street Tree Advisory's recommendation that we allow the removal and the replacement, if possible, of the trees.
Relocation?
Relocation, if possible. Sorry.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. That brings us to D3, 625 Calle Palo, Colorado.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the tree located at 625 Calle Palo, Colorado is a tipu tree. The reasons were that it was too close to the driveway and there was potential to damage to the driveway. The tree is currently located less than 2 feet from the driveway of this property, and will get large enough that the trunk of the tree will actually impact the driveway eventually. The Street Advisory Committee and staff recommend the removal be approved on the condition the tree is replaced with a tree that has a potential to get 25 feet tall, 25-foot spread at another location within the property.
Within the setback or anywhere within the property?
The recommendation is farther away from the driveway. At no the setback at this property effectually goes to the front of the building. So, if it's to be placed in the front of the building, then it would be in the setback.
Okay.
Chair Longstreet?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Downey? Did the Street Tree Advisory Committee or the staff identify for themselves, even unofficially, possible relocation or replanting places on the property?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, staff would be happy to work with the applicant to find possible locations to replant a tree and assist with the decision-making process about a replacement tree.
Okay.
Again, as a follow-up, I guess I'm just a little concerned that we have recommendations coming to us with conditions on them that we don't necessarily have a guarantee that the condition can be fulfilled. I hear you saying that you'd be willing to work with them to find a place, but without information that tells me that there is a place or several places that a tree could be planted, it's hard for me to be 100% behind this.
I apologize. I misunderstood your question. There's ample space in the front yard to plant another tree.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion or?
I'll move concurrence with staff and advisory committee on the removal approval.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. And now we are to item E, deny the front yard setback tree removal at 321 East Islay.
Erling Street and Commissioners, the tree at 321 East Islay is a very nice Italian stone pine. I would not call it mature yet, but it is a nice specimen. The reason that they supplied for wanting to remove the tree was significant damage to the neighbor's driveway. And there is significant damage from the roots of this tree as well as potentially other trees in the area. The tree is far enough away, however, from that driveway that if approved or if denied, the root pruning could occur that would reduce the chances that any future damage would occur. Therefore, the Street Advisory Committee and staff recommend to deny this removal.
Questions of staff? Motion then. Yeah. Oh. I didn't fill out a request, so I didn't know it was. Okay. Well, why don't you come on up and give us your name, and then you can turn in one of those slips later for our records.
Oh, this gentleman just said that but you can't guarantee that there's not going to be any damage.
You're addressing sir. You address your comments to us.
I'm sorry. Well,
Yeah, we need.
You can't guarantee.
You need an introduction of who you are, so we have your name.
I'm Stephen Sabo. I'm here with Miss Marilyn Carani. I'm just a friend helping on this. And now I've been to the property several times, and there is quite damage. That tree is very close to the neighbor's driveway, and she's already repaired the driveway once. Secondly, I have a letter here from a Mr. Rick, is it Fulmer? She's the street manager, and it states that it's already damaged the sidewalk and curb. There needs to be some part of it has to be replaced. So now I don't know if the roots will be cut out if there's going to be any damage afterwards. I mean, is there any guarantee on that or not? Or can anybody guarantee that?
Well, that's not up to us to guarantee, so, I mean, I can't.
And then also, you know, we never had a chance to check the foundation. It's pretty close to the house. So I feel that there might be, I mean, we can check. I mean, if we can have a postponement or something, check if there's any foundation damage to the house because of this, or the roots to the tree, from this tree.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. I drove over there a couple days ago, and there is the damage to the tree, not to the tree, to the driveway, and it's a driveway I think that goes to a apartment building in the back. Yeah, in the back. And possibly if we're able to cut the roots, and I'm not that expert, it may solve the problem. I don't know that. Whether or not there's damage to the house, if there was damage to the house, that would put a different perspective in mind. I would be comfortable at tabling this for a month to get a little more information.
And we can entertain a motion to postpone it at the applicant request for a month to reestablish, and maybe they would like to consult an arborist about root pruning and root barrier in that, and see what that.
I'll just say so moved.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second?
So we have a motion to postpone this item at 625 Palo Colorado till, or no, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong one. 321 East Islay till next month for further information. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And then we will move, now we're to some postponements. Mr. Downey, why don't you?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the next item is 412 Kai Alamo. The reason stated was damage to the gentleman's foundation. I'd made a phone call to the gentleman, left him a couple of different messages asking for some kind of proof to that, and have not received return calls. The reason for the recommended postponement is to allow opportunity for the gentleman to provide evidence of damage to the foundation. Street Revisor Committee and staff recommend that the Commission postpone this and allow the applicant opportunity to provide such documentation.
I'll move that we concur with staff and advisory committee on postponement of this item.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And our last item would be 163 La Jolla Drive.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the tree at 163 La Jolla Drive is a Pittosporum tree. The tree is at the end of a cul-de-sac, or the property is at the end of a cul-de-sac. They are proposing to realign the driveway to the other side of the property. They provided, you have been supplied with a plot plan, but they have not provided, in their application they state that they will be re-landscaping the entire property, but they have not provided what that landscape will be. So the Street Advisory Committee staff recommend this be postponed until a landscape plan be provided.
I'll make that motion to uphold committee and staff recommendation for postponing the request from the applicant at 163 La Jolla Drive.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. That was a busy tree night tonight, Mr. Downey. Okay, that brings us, we have no old business and we have new business. Item 3, proposed policy changes to the golf club tournaments.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I have asked Nancy Woods, who has returned to work with the department, although she retired over a year ago. She is doing some additional work for us, particularly at the golf course. And so I asked her if she would present this item to the commission.
It would be golf that brought you back.
Speaker system here. I haven't seen the buttons. Good evening. As you know, the recession and the construction project at the golf course has tipped us over a little bit on revenue collection. We're not the only ones in town that are experiencing some revenue loss due to the recession, but it is, in conjunction with the construction project, not good news lately. Although the most recent numbers in November are a little better than they were for the previous 90 days, so we have our fingers crossed. Because of the recession and our construction project, a lot of the other golf courses in the area have become much more competitive for our business. And so the golf course professional, Chris Tallarico, and the Mulligan's Cafe owners came to us and asked us to really look at some of our policies and try to be more flexible in order to compete in the business market in the current time. So we got together, and one of the specific areas that especially the professional wanted us to look at was the tournament policies. Our tournament policies have been pretty strict, and that's from a long time ago when these policies were determined when the golf course was really busy, and we wanted to certainly keep the golf course open for the public. Now, of course, we have days where we can accommodate some more tournaments, and we'd like to try to do that. So we've been not only have we been losing tournaments because of the recession and the projects, we've been losing them to the other golf courses. So we do want to compete with them in a better way. So I'm going to just briefly go over the report and the areas that we're looking at for change. We'd like to allow more shotgun tournaments. These are really popular with groups and clubs and companies who want to come in and all play together, but not in a string of tee times. They all want to get out on the golf course at the same time and start and finish at the same time so that they can have an event afterwards. So we'd like to allow more shotgun tournaments except for Sundays. And we'd like to, because of those shotgun tournaments and the high demand in the past, we had put on an extra fee that they had to pay $500 and $1,000, and that was because of the demand, and so we were more strict in the fee area. But now we'd like to get rid of those extra 2 fees. However, because our golf maintenance crews do not work on Saturdays, we are recommending that we still have a fee of $500 to cover the cost to have the staff come in and set up a tournament. Sometimes tournaments want us to move the tees around or do some other things on the course that the golf maintenance staff does have to do in order to make for a successful tournament. We'd also like to allow tournaments for smaller groups. The current policy says you have to be 24 people or more, but especially the Tri-County area, there's a lot of small groups, less than that number, who want to travel around to the different courses and have an event somewhere else. Currently, they'd have to just use our reservation system, and so the Pro Shop says go to the reservation system. We'd like to have that as an event in the policy, and that gives a lot better customer service to the customer, and we hope to draw more groups in that way. And I think the final policy change in the report is really one that we would like to change the policy that the Park and Recreation Commission has authority over tournaments. We believe that this was done in the past many years ago. We're not exactly sure why, but it is an anomaly, and most of the other administrative policies in the department are approved and reviewed by the Parks and Recreation Director, so we're asking for that policy to change over to the consistency that the other departments' programs have. Because this is hopefully an interim recession, and the construction, we hope, will be all done certainly by the end of January, and we're going to draw more people back to the golf course. We are asking for an interim policy, a review by next December. If it's working and the public is tolerating it well and still accommodating the public at the golf course, we'll give you a different recommendation to maybe continue the policies or change them in some way depending on what's happened over the next 12 months. The Golf Advisory Committee met last week, Wednesday, unanimously and enthusiastically approved this recommendation to your commission for these policy changes, and the chair, Jeff Hughes, is here if you have any questions about the GAC's look at these proposed recommendations. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, do you have anything to add? Okay. Now, if we go ahead with this recommendation, really you won't be coming back to us with further changes. They would be administrative, wouldn't they?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I just caught that myself. So what the recommendation currently reads is that all of these proposed changes are interim through December a year from now. What the Commission could do is, if in fact the Commission wanted to make the change that this is actually tournament policies should fall under administrative policies and be handled the way other things are within the department, you can make that not on an interim basis. And then we in the department will be looking at these policies. We will be continually reviewing how these proposed changes are working and not working, because we are working very hard to improve the play out at the golf course. So if in fact you make that recommendation and you change how the policy is handled, then in fact it would not come back to you.
And I would like to say that I'm impressed with the Golf Advisory Committee, because truly you have a group of dedicated people advising staff at a much more informed level than our level. And so it's not like we're turning this just over without public input, to me. We get a tremendous amount of informed public input for staff, so that makes me very comfortable. Mr. Hockman.
Thank you, Chair Longstreet. Ms. Rapp, so indeed, if we acted on the last proposal on the change, we probably wouldn't have to act on any of the other proposals, because those could then lie with the director.
That's correct.
I'd like to, I would feel comfortable with the Golf Advisory Committee's recommendation, and I think we're in good hands with the input that they're giving. And
come on up, Mr. Hughes.
My name is Jeff Hughes, and we recommend these changes for the simple fact that the golf course is not to, we don't have 300 rounds anymore on the golf course. If we're getting 190 rounds, we need to fill those times up as best we can, and this small tournaments and other kind of shotgun tournaments, if they were, would help do that. We could start getting some more money out instead of going out so much. So thank you very much.
I think it just makes the whole system more responsive to change. And that's what we want to be able to do, is to serve the public the best way, and that's to make sure our golf course is financially viable and meets the current needs, not the needs we had 15 years ago or whatever. So,
excuse me, I have one question. With the small tournament, the 24 people, the 6 foursomes, we're not looking to do that as a shotgun start, or are we?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, no, that is correct. Shotguns are different than type of tournament than a regular tournament that would have sequential tee times, and that small group of 24 or less would fall into the sequential tee time event. You're welcome.
but they would be allowed to have some customer service. I think now they're put off to an internet site to do their, and so they have to get back on the internet, and it doesn't make us look responsive to people.
Correct.
So, see, I learned some things when I went to the meeting. I paid attention.
Chair Longstreet?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to make one motion, and then I'll probably have a second motion after that. And, of course, I'll have a comment on my first motion. The motion is that we, and this is on recommendation number 6, that the Parks and Recreation Director shall have the authority to establish and adjust policies and procedures as necessary related to the use of the Santa Barbara Golf Club for tournament play.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay.
And my discussion on that is that I heard a couple of things in the presentation that we want to keep in mind as the director is looking at this. One is, of course, to the profitability, or at least the revenue generation of the program, but also is to keeping a high priority that we're still trying to enhance the availability for the public in general.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now, does that give you...
Well, I have another motion
Okay.
that we actually do not speak to any of the other recommendations in terms of an approval or a rejection of them. And now that we have a director who has the authority to tweak tournament rules, that we let the director make those decisions. I think we could still comment on them, and as we have. But my motion is that we do not act on the rest of the recommendations.
That we let them go forward in an administrative way. Yes, and I just want to say that I'm not a golfer. I have no golfing experience. I've learned a lot serving on the advisory committee, and I enjoy it. I enjoy learning about it, and I appreciate all the work that the advisory committee puts into the golf course. Thank you.
I will second his second motion.
I don't think that was a motion. Okay.
Do we need it?
I don't know that we need it. We can simply not act on them.
I think that's what we're
Then I'll withdraw the motion.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
and
just
then I'll
let-
withdraw my second.
Okay, you're on, Miss Rapp. It's yours now. And thank you. But we do like to be kept up to date on what's going on there. That's the good news. Okay, that brings us to the Cabrillo Ball Field improvements for action.
I did. What happened? Where'd it go to? Oh, there it is.
There we are.
Okay.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, Parks Manager Santos Escobar will present this item.
Let's see where to go to again. There we go. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Santos Escobar, Parks Manager, and I'm here tonight to speak regarding the Cabrillo Ball Field improvements and to give you just an update on what's occurring here at Cabrillo Ball Field. As you can tell from this PowerPoint photo, first the yellow is an existing fence line that's currently in place with the dugouts right here. And I'm putting together a CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant application that'll go forth this coming December, and I'm asking for your approval on a project to go through and install additional 6-foot fencing. And the reasons behind this is, for the past 4 years, the Parks and Recreation Department, along with the Police Department and the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force, we've been working in this particular area in order to improve the safety of this particular park. During evening softball games, we have lots of problems at the park in regards to the folks that do go through and are hanging out in the area. They are disrupting ball games. They're causing little ruckuses at times as well. There's daily calls for service due to illegal activities that are occurring, drinking alcohol, drugs and such, and it's a recommendation of the Police Department, Neighborhood Improvement Task Force, and our department to go through and enclose this particular area off. And there will also be some gates also installed in the red areas in order to go through and open it up only during ball games and scheduled events. And it's a real tragedy that we're having folks going through and taking over this particular ball field, and our softball folks that do play on the evenings, their families and such are getting to the point where they would not like to play at this particular ball field. And we're asking for your recommendation.
Okay.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I'd like to add a few comments just to emphasize that this was not an easy decision for the department and an easy position for the department to take. This is not the only park facility that we are and have been contemplating restricting access to for daily park users in order to protect the park for the specific use of that park facility. And I'll just give you other examples. We've had this same discussion at Pershing Park with the softball, baseball facilities there. And we are continually challenged with keeping this area safe for its intended use. And it's becoming a greater problem for this community. And we have problems in many of our parks. But in our ball field facilities, it has gotten to the degree that the people for whom the facility is intended do not feel safe, do not feel comfortable, feel that, public safety, public health issues are presented to them in using the facility because it's how it's used in the non-scheduled park uses. So this has been a significant discussion and hesitancy on our part to closing off a part of a facility, part of a park from users. But we find that we really are at that point. We've tried a lot of other ideas and efforts so that we didn't have to go there, but we are there. So that's why we're making this presentation to you, and it's coming also with the support of PD and the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force, and it's probably not the first discussion like this that we're going to have.
I think we all understand that. My one question is, does it allow us to secure the area of the bathrooms a little bit better?
The bathrooms are currently closed unless there is a scheduled activity. So yes, it does allow us to increase the safety of the bathrooms.
Great.
Will there be a monitor, or how will the facility be opened, or?
If it is scheduled for use, there is a staff monitor or some level of staffing associated with that anyway.
Burns?
What we're doing with this is something that I'd like to say is generally beyond the scope of the Park and Rec Department. We like to think of us as a caring community, and there's other departments and organizations within the city that probably would have a different perspective than the perspective that I have, which is let's put the fence up. And the question that I have is, have we talked with the other community organizations to let them know what our plans are so we're not people don't feel that they're being blindsided?
Either or.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, this action is actually part of a number of actions that the city is taking, and we actually work pretty closely with a lot of those other organizations. Because it has been a growing problem, I think everybody is pretty much aware of all of the challenges that we have there. So I feel comfortable in saying I think everybody's aware of the problem and that this is not the best solution, but it is a solution that protects the park. I'm not exactly sure beyond that what we would need to do.
I would say that it's probably at the request of the user groups are in support of it.
Well, no, we do believe, I mean, we've had user groups tell us that they weren't going to come back, so we definitely need to take this action to protect them. I was hearing Commissioner Burns' concern being for the non-scheduled uses, the transients that are in that area. There are a lot of concerns that we had about closing the restrooms. Now, closing the restroom was a budget measure. And that does mean that there is no public restroom in that immediate area for the people who were using it. And that I'm just going to wrap back around Commissioner Burns' comments that that's not really our priority. Our priority is parks and recreation. But it is a concern because we have the issue if they're not using the public restroom, are they using the creek? Are they using other parts of the park? It is not a good solution. It's a solution. And as a community, we certainly have a very complex issue in front of us to address some of these issues and protect our parks for the broader community.
Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Chair Longstreet, Ms. Rath, and Mr. Escobar. I don't have too many concerns about securing our parks. I think that it's probably good policy for us to keep the parks available for public use and to discourage the illegal activities and other loitering and things that are detrimental to the public use of the park. I'm actually concerned as to whether or not this solution will do that. It seems like a big park to me that if you prevent people from getting into the bleacher area, they could just as easily camp out on the inside of the fence there, and the user groups are going to be faced with the same problem, which is getting, people off of the ball field as opposed to getting them off of the benches. To me, this seems a security issue as to, whether people are camping out on the ball field, if they're camping out on the benches, how do we deal with that when a user group is going to come? So my question really is this solution actually going to do anything?
Either.
It is a solution. The level of effectiveness we won't know until we do it. The Pershing baseball field, they actually have enclosed some of the areas that before they were having a lot of homeless people hang out and creating a lot of health and public safety concerns, and that has been effective. So I think incrementally we're trying what we can, and we'll have to evaluate whether it will work or not. Closing the restrooms itself has created at least some discouraging, but we'll have to do it and evaluate the effectiveness. We don't know.
Well, I guess I'm continuing to wonder if this monitor who will then be opening the space for the user groups, does that person or team of people or whatever it is have the authority and or ability to clear the area of of the people that we're saying are not the actual users at that time? Are they the appropriate people to be doing that? And while we're looking for a grant to secure some areas here, are we identifying any budget that would also assist with what the real issue is, which is policing the area?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, very good questions. Currently, how the department does handle this exact issue that you're talking about, which is you have people who have permits for activities, whether it's a picnic area in a park or a ball field like this. And the expectation is when they arrive, the area is clean, free of other people, and ready for them to use it. And that is the role of the various park monitors and when needed, backed up by the park rangers. And they have that authority. So where we have significant issues, the police department has really been our partner in this. And, you know, if they know we have activities that are starting at a certain time on a regular basis, they will swing by and help us with that as well. But you you got it right, because that is one of the big issues.
And I think that goes back to what we've talked about many times, is that our staff is front line in a lot of those areas with a lot of the difficult issues in the community. What I can see as a benefit is if, you know, I'm down there, let's say, for a softball game or a ball game, you know, that it delineates where we're to be and where other people aren't. And sometimes the things that happen at Pershing and Cabrillo, or people need a little delineation. And so is it going to solve all of our problems? Probably not, but it'll help give tools to start solving them. So I don't think we've got the magic bullet, unfortunately, for any of it. I would support the project. I think it will be interesting after it's installed. Hopefully we'll get the CDBG to get a report back about the effectiveness, if maybe get some survey, you know, a little bit with the users to see if how it's going, so we can evaluate it for future areas.
I just had a brief question. Who writes the grant?
I will be writing the grant.
December 17th. I'm writing one too, and I know it's quite an intense grant to write, so best of luck and good pursuit.
Correct. I have written a few of these and been successful,
you know.
so we'll keep
Okay, is there
moving along.
a motion?
You know, what you had said was so perfect. If you had just said, I so move, it would have been easy for us.
Okay, I so move what I said. Do you have that down, Carla? That we move forward with this project. We look to evaluate it after installation for future use. Is that?
Excuse me, Chair, what we're being asked to do is approve an application to the CDBG. Okay.
Yeah, then we move forward with this.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Good luck, and thank you, and thanks to all the staff that deal with these issues. Okay. Now we are to item 5, which is the Combined Parks and Recreation Commission and Youth Member for Action.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, as you know, on the November 3rd election, the people of Santa Barbara approved the combining of the Park Commission with the Recreation Commission, increasing the size of the commission from 5 to 7 members, and allowing at the council's discretion to appoint one member, to appoint a youth age 16 or older to serve as one of those commissioners. What the council, when the council approved this going forward to go on the ballot, they indicated that they wanted the department to coordinate bringing forth the recommendations on how the youth member would be appointed, and the term of office for the youth member, and that would then be designated by ordinance in the city's municipal code in supporting the charter change. Again, this decision of appointing a youth member will be made at the council whenever there is a vacancy on the commission. That will be something that this council or any future councils can consider. So we are asking the commission to form a subcommittee with 2 commissioners and 2 youth council members to develop what we will take forward as a proposal to the council. So that's what you're being asked to do now, is to appoint, to form the subcommittee and appoint 2 commissioners to serve on that committee. We do not anticipate that this will be a long involvement. It's probably at the most 1 or 2 meetings. Staff will take the recommendation forward to the council. It may go directly to the ordinance committee and then go to the council, since the council has already indicated the direction that they want. So we'll follow up on that. The intent would be to move this forward quickly enough so that during the next recruitment, if the commission currently has 1 vacancy in its current form, with the approval of adding 2 new commissioners, that leaves a potential for 3 vacancies. Currently in the applicant review process before council, there are only 2 people who have submitted applications. So that leaves the potential for a 3rd person to be appointed at the next recruitment, which would be in June. So we want to move forward with the recommendations to council so that we can have a commissioner appointed during the next recruitment process.
And if we did not have a youth apply, then it would go into standard adult applicant?
That, again, will be a council decision, but our hope is that we would always have a full commission.
Yeah, 7 seems better than 6. Okay. So we need 2 volunteers.
At the teen council on Monday night, the teen council appointed 2 members to be on the committee. Diego is one of them. Katie is another. So the teen council is looking forward to move forward on this. They were not sure how long it would last, but they thought that they wanted to get started on it, just so you know.
And for the record, I can't be on that committee because I won't be here, so it's up to the rest of you.
Well, where's Duraka? I think I probably should be on that, and if you guys would ask me to be on it, I would love to be on it.
Well, I think as the teen liaison, it's appropriate. I think Commissioner Larimore Hall is a natural because this was his wishes. I mean, he was strongly supportive of this. We just have to get him to the meeting. So there you go. I think that should be our 2. And if we can't, if he can't make it or we can't schedule him, an alternate.
Would you remind me of the time commitment that you're anticipating?
To be honest, I think this is probably 1 and maybe 2 meetings, because there could be, we already have the guidelines for the youth intern program, which are pretty specific and we can draw from if that's part of our recommendation. And then it's a discussion of the term. So
I'll be
1 or
an
2
alternate.
meetings.
Yeah. And if it comes into a conflict, I'm backing him up. Yes, we're deep on this one. Okay. Is that what you need from us? Do we need to take?
Yes.
That's
Chair
it?
Longstreet, that's all that we needed.
Okay. The one for action, we have our action is that we have appointed a subcommittee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then we are set to go on that. Then that will bring us to budget.
And commissioners, we are moving forward with our plans to have a budget work session with you on December 3rd. I'm sorry, I was just looking to see. I think that's a Wednesday. Thursday, December 3rd. And at that meeting, we'll be focusing on recreation services. So it'll be similar to what we did with parks, where we'll provide a little breadth of information on recreation programs. We plan also to talk about co-sponsorships and educate you on the different relationships that we have with other community organizations. So we will get those materials in the mail to you this coming Tuesday so that you'll have them over the holiday weekend. And we expect you to work very diligently over the holiday weekend to come prepared. So
don't we always?
Some of the materials you actually have already received, because we'll be using some of the materials that we gave you in our very first workshop. And we'll spend a little more time on that.
For the record, I will be in Boston at that time.
Okay.
I have just a comment that if I had come earlier on time, I would have put in my commissioner committee assignment report, but it has to do with the budget. The Arts and Crafts Advisory Committee is anxious about knowing what's going on with them on a budget perspective. What we're trying to do is look at different options on saving money, and they'd like to move forward. We have a ad hoc committee that, as of right now, I'm the only member of. They would like to be, instead of a ad hoc committee, they would like to be a meeting of their entire commission so that all of their members can be a part of it. And I'm not sure how that would get structured, how that fits into the budget. Obviously, it's a budget item, but just to pass that on to staff. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on budget tonight? Then let's move to neighborhood and outreach services.
As Recreation Manager Sarah Hanna is currently on vacation, she has asked Antonio Velasquez, Senior Supervisor with Neighborhood and Outreach Services, to give you an update.
Good evening, Chairperson Longstreet, Commissioners. It's always a pleasure to come here to give you information on what Neighborhood and Outreach Services is doing. As you know, the department is currently implementing its restructuring plan of what was formerly the Community Services and Teen Sections. We have plans to complete this transition this current quarter, so we hope to be able to give you a progression as we go forward. It's challenging to give you information that is more important than other activity, but I'll try to be brief and give you what I consider to be some of the highlights of the various things that we are doing in Neighborhood and Outreach Services. This past month, we serviced over 3,120 individuals that took part in various free programs that are offered at our community centers. The number reflects a 12% increase over last month, and we see this as a progressive development where we have more and more individuals coming to our centers to take part in all of the programs that we offer there. We're currently developing a plan to provide additional mobile services to the Lower West Side neighborhood since we have the recent closure of the Lower West Side Community Center. We'll have more information to you. We are working with collaborative agencies in that area, in particular Housing Authority. The subcommittee of the Center Advisory Center Committees, the Franklin, Lower West Side, and West Side Advisory Committees, have conducted outreach meetings during the month to canvass the residents to take input and discuss the restructuring of the resident participation. They are going to be presenting a proposal, or at least a final proposal, to the subcommittee or the ad hoc committee of the commission that includes 2 members of the Youth Council and 2 members each of the advisory committees. This meeting is tentatively being scheduled for December the 10th. They will discuss not only the proposal from the advisory committees, but other options that the other members may have. As part of the citizen participation, resident participation, the section is also involved in the Community Development Block Grant Program through the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force, which involves at the bottom of the process, the input from the residents of neighborhoods. This year, the possible programs that the department may be involved in will be restroom renovation, sidewalk repair, and basketball court rehab at Ortega Park, which would complete that project. As Santos Escobar mentioned, the Cabrillo Ball Field also is one of the priorities. There is also some resident initiated proposals for a design phase for curb cuts, gutters, and sidewalks on Figueroa Street and Euclid Street, which now is both a safety hazard as well as a flood hazard when the rains come. There are some projects also to try to complete the air conditioning, lack of air conditioning at the West Side Community Center and at Louise Lowry Davis centers. There is a project that is being investigated to see if it fits the CDBG guidelines, which would propose a neighborhood grant program to help with the parkway improvements to improve some of the safety hazards involved in some of the parkways. Also, as you know, the youth programming has been a highlighted area in our operations, and will continue to be so due to the restructuring of the department, as well as continued focus by the city in reducing youth violence. In that area, we had a PowerPoint presentation delivered by staff regarding job-related information coordination that was undertaken during the summer, that was presented by staff to the executive committee of the South Coast Youth Gang Task Force. At this meeting that took place on November 4th, the information was given on what took part, as well as a plan on how to plan for next year and in the coming months. The Youth Apprenticeship Program has hired 20 apprentices that will be working during the school year and are currently being placed in job sites. During the school year, there will be 2 sessions, 10 participants each from the east side and from the west side, and we'll be working a total of 100 hours on the job training, as well as participating in job skills training workshops. Teen center activities at both Franklin, West Side, and 1235 are now being operated between the hours of 3 and 7. During the month, there was extensive surveying of young people. Hundreds of young people were surveyed at schools, continuation schools, out in parks, out in the street, to get an idea of what types of services to bring to these teen centers. Amazingly, after jobs, the main concern was to learn how to cook. Amazing. And not only how to cook, but also how to get involved in the culinary occupation. So what we have done is that we have prioritized and are working out budgets to see how we can get these priorities in place for these teen centers. One way that we're going to work in some of these priorities is to try to layer everything that we have in regards to resources so that we can maximize it. For instance, Santa Barbara Foundation funded a Healthy Options for Teens program to deal with healthy lifestyles. It was a $6,000 grant, and what it basically is doing is to provide hands-on experience in all levels of healthy options that might include cooking. And how we're going to bring in the occupational aspect of it is that at West Side we have a caterer, Jolly Brothers, that is going to be providing us with a series of workshops for those that are interested in going into that occupational field. And they will go from learning the tools of the trade to actually going into the business end of it and practicing on actually catering an event. The activity, or at least this series of workshops, will end with a catered event that the participants themselves will invite people to come to one of the community centers, and they will cater the event from the step one, which is actually prep, to actually catering and serving the meal. I'm hoping that we will be able to invite you to be part of that event. There are so many other things that are taking place within the section that hopefully with the coming months we'll be giving you more of an idea how all of this is coming together to try to assist young people and reducing some of the incidents of violence in our community. And this concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Just comment. That's very exciting about surveying youth and finding out what their interests are. And the facility you have at the West Side for catering is excellent. So it couldn't be more perfect. So I'm really glad to hear that. That's very nice. And as well as all the other wonderful things you're doing.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I have just a couple of comments and questions, or maybe just comments. The Teen Council is having a meeting on December 7th, and possibly if you're planning to give a presentation to the ad hoc committee on December 10th, you might look at giving part of that presentation to the full Teen Council. I don't know if that's feasible, but I think it would be better to get their 17 members of Teen Council and only 2 people on the committee. It might get more, you might get some more input from the Teen Council. And another item with Teen Council, one thing they're doing that they are working on a grant, I'm not sure from what organization, to do a speak out, which like they've done in the past, and this one will be for teen rights. So it's trying to get the Teen Council more involved. They have also discussed trying to have a meeting at one of the centers, and possibly both of them, and having you at that meeting or someone on the 7th might give it a little more impetus. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much. I know it's tough times for a lot of people in the neighborhoods, and I'm sure all the food distribution programs and everything are at max right now. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
All right. Now, do we have any other items on our agenda tonight? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nobody opposes adjournment. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.